Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is January 28th, 2026. Welcome to the podcast. I just got back from Mexico, got back a day later because of the storms, so I'm very excited to be back and to put you in the know. Again, please subscribe. Please share with other people that are interested in what's really happening with our U.S. federal government policy. And let's begin. Okay, so today we want to talk about the U.S. federal government policy on foreign aid 2026. So, if you will remember, I've talked about this for on and off probably the last 2 years. And what I was focusing on was how much money we were spending. So, as of January 2025, there has been a U.S. foreign aid policy has undergone a historic shift under the current administration that took over January 20th last year, moving from multi-agency development model to a centralized America First strategy focused on national interest and transactional diplomacy. Before, I don't even know what we were doing besides giving away lots of money based on the data. Okay, so before we go any further, I want to remind you of what kind of money we were spending. So, prior to 2025, U.S. foreign aid funding, and this is just one organization, foreign aid, consistently ranged approximately between 53 billion and 77 billion a year. Now they're going back to 2008 era and etc. So if we look at exactly what that means is, so in fiscal year 24, this is right before the election, we had obligated 82.3 billion. Now there is one alibi, the war in Ukraine. We were still dispersing to other countries besides Ukraine quite a bit of money. And if you will remember, the rest of the world really wasn't giving that much. And the Arabians definitely weren't giving a dime toward that. So it was the Europeans and us. Okay. So fiscal year 2023, 71.9 dispersed, and we had obligated 99.9 billion. Fiscal year 2022, it was 74 billion. Now here's something that's interesting. So prior to fiscal year 2019, we were at 39.2 billion. Okay, so we went in 4 or 5 years to 82.3 billion. Now remember that the war started with Ukraine probably about 2021ish. Okay, so even with that war, that was a significant jump. All right. So prior to that, let's look at what the other large donor countries were given prior to 2025. Okay, so United States, we were leading the way at 66 billion approximately. Germany was at 36.7. Japan was at 19.6, and there is no data except that the United Kingdom said that the funding from them fell by 16%, and then France had a modest increase of over 10% in 2023. but no numbers to what they actually gave. And if you can tell it, so Germany gave 36.7 and we were still at 66, meaning that we gave the most money. Okay. And of course, they talk about growing total by falling target percentages, crisis driven increases. They were just spending a lot of money. And that was the facts as far as that goes. And we were giving money to Ethiopia and Afghanistan and Egypt. So when I was talking about that before, I looked at what money these countries had coming in to justify the United States giving them more money. Now, some of the money to other countries like Israel and to South Korea were justified and opinion. We can see the results of what the assistance was doing. With these other countries, to date, I've seen no tangibles from them that things are actually getting better. Now, aid to Ukraine in 2023 is 18.2 billion. Okay, so let's please go out there and look at what results we got from that. All right, so then I looked at the Arab countries, what they were given in their own region. Okay, so in 2024, Saudi Arabia gave 1.9 billion in humanitarian funding, and then they gave the gross official development assistance 5.3 billion. Remember, we were given 66 billion total, and in the region it was more significant as well. And they were giving the money to Palestine for 289 projects, Yemen and Jordan. Remember, we were giving them money too, and so were the Europeans. All right. And for global polio eradication, they were given 500 million. Remember, the World Health Organization just came and said that we were wrong for decreasing the amount of money that we were giving them. We went from 40 billion to around probably 70 million. And actually, I think it may have been a little less than that. Let's see. Okay. Yep, I don't have it. But they were really upset with us because we were not giving them the same rates of money. And that was being funded through it was funded through the United Nations. Okay. So I'll try to look for that here in a second. Okay, so as I said at first, we shifted from centralized to America First strategy focus on national interests. We also made some major changes. Dissolution of USA. Remember, first part of last year, there were court cases and all of this stuff. And I had previously told you that U.S. aid administrator wasn't even an American citizen. And it was alarming at how much money they were spending the last year of the Biden administration. So they officially closed July 1st, 2025. Also, reminder, all of the people who worked for them were government employees, and that's where the bulk of the downsizing came from, were organizations like this. So they closed July 1st, 2025, and the other functions were transferred to the Department of State. 2.5 years ago, USAID gave money to the same countries, and then the Department of State, using their budget, did the same thing, and I pointed that out to you. These are taxpayer dollars that were funding all of these programs, and you heard about all of the programs. All right. So they canceled 83% of the USAID managed programs and contracts. They had some contracts that you would not believe. So they transitioned to the American First Global Health Strategy. This strategy pivots toward self-reliance, requiring recipient countries to co-invest and transition to full self-funding by 2026. It prioritizes 4 core areas: HIV, TB, malaria, and polio. That concept, when U.S. aid first came into being, was what they were supposed to do, because U.S. aid, if you read the abbreviation, it says U.S. aid, but actually it was the United States Agency for International Development. And over the years, it transformed like 20 years ago, and their motto was present from the Americans, or something like that. And so now you've got the new humanitarian model. The U.S. has significantly reduced annual humanitarian aid and now stipulates that such funds must be channeled through specific organizations like the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And then we had to exclude some nations. So before, the money just went out there to agencies, it went to the UN, and then there was double money being spent based on the U.S. government at the time not really knowing where the money was going. Key strategic objectives. Current policy defines aid as a direct tool for foreign policy rather than a broad development goal. And that is huge. Development goal had turned into just putting billions of dollars out there and seeing if something stuck. So the primary pillars are alignment with U.S. interests. All assistance must be fully aligned with the current foreign policy. Trade over aid. The administration emphasizes private sector investment and opportunity over dependency. And this specifically is aimed at these countries that we were giving the government money, and then we have no accounting of what they did with it after, except that they wanted us to give them more money. Now, in the African countries, because Africa is a continent, like Ghana, Ethiopia, places like that, it was widespread, giving them billions of dollars a year. So they changed that because the government in these countries are supposed to help their own people, not just take the money and decide to use it for other stuff. Okay, countering global rivals. Programs are increasingly designed to counter exploitative aid models of rivals like China. Okay, so, and that's fine. Okay. Role of Congress. While the administration has sought deep cuts, including a proposed 60% reduction in global health programs, Congress has often appropriated high levels of funding than requested and protected specific programs from total elimination. Okay, so the foreign aid is also tied to how much money goes against the deficit in the end as well. So I gave you an example a couple of years ago where I said that we were bringing in 2023 3.5 trillion, and that's with half the country paying taxes. So we can cover the domestic programs quite easily and then use the rest to pay toward the deficit. What we were doing is funding all of these programs for billions of dollars and then getting ourselves in more of a bind with the national debt. So that foreign aid, in my view, based on the data, we were spending a lot of money, triple what any other country on the planet was spending. And these were taxpayer dollars. And the data bears out that they were dependent. That's why we changed the policy. What do you think? This is Just Listen, hosted by George. This topic on foreign aid is very important. Please share it and have a great day.